3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Ooh, happy Friday. Welcome to Mad Gains Live. You guys like my new intro? Lean Marketing made it for me. If you want fun graphics and intros, reach out to Lean Marketing. Happy Friday, everybody. Holy crap, it's been a week. If you had freight running in or out of Texas or Arkansas, or even a little along the East Coast, it's been rough this week. So all y'all who work your butts off, grab a beer or grab some wine. And we are going to talk about broker carrier relationships with my lovely guest today. But first, I'm going to introduce you to our sponsors. One you already know and we love. It's our favorite factoring company, OTR Capital. And Grace is here with us to remind us how amazing OTR is. And I was fishing around on OTR's website, and I love that they said that they have quick, easy, reliable payments. And they are my favorite factoring company because they don't play games. No hidden fees, no termination gotchas. They're not messing around. They truly care about your business. And you probably will see that when you talk to Grace today. We also have JJ Keller, one of my favorite companies that I'm very excited to start sponsoring Mad Gains Live in Madtropolis. For my truckers out there, they are your safety and compliance experts. They have about 150 consultants all over the country that help you with ELDs, driver hiring, driver fitness, compliance, accidents, and driver hiring too. So reach out to JJ Keller. They will help you with all of your needs. So today we are going to start. I see Bill is joining us, and now he's a Madtropolis member. Hi, Bill. Woo-hoo! So excited. And then Troy Andrews is with us, Drew Wilder, and the freight coach is in the house. And I know that the freight coach, Chris Jolly, often has a lot to say on this topic. So I'm excited to see what he has to say in the comments. For those of you who have questions for our guests, you know the drill. I have my cell phone on me. Amanda Miller is going to text me. She's our favorite freight broker out of Alabama, Flatbed broker, which I think she's going to join us and do a flatbed show with us soon. But she will send the messages to me on my cell phone that if you have questions for your guests. All right, let's get started. First, Grace, I'm so excited to have you back on.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Could you introduce yourself and also let us know, are you in anywhere where the weather is bad?
I am not. So I am Grace Maher. I'm with OTR Capital. I'm the director of operations. I've been with OTR since we started for 10 years. So it's been wonderful. I'm in Atlanta. It's actually really beautiful outside. I cannot complain. So it's, we've got a lot of carriers out there and just hoping they stay safe and warm. It's been a crazy week for sure.
It definitely has. And then we have Abby with us, who's not new to Madtropolis, but new to being on the show. I'm so happy you could join us. Are you somewhere where it's cold and snowy?
I happen to be in the heart of downtown Chicago. So I currently have a view of Lake Michigan that is half frozen. And then the rivers, actually, I'm on the corner of the rivers. They're both frozen as well. I don't know if you guys saw that, but somebody just tried to come in my door. So if you hear my dog barking, that's why. I literally saw the handle.
Oh, that's so weird and kind of creepy.
Yeah, but I know they're working on a unit like 2 doors down. So that must be why. But that's I was like, oh.
Is your dog like super dangerous? Is it like a rawr?
Yeah. He's a killer for sure. Hi, Chrissy.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, sorry. I won't do my dog voice on this. Stay professional, Abby.
Ferocious.
What kind of breed is that?
This is Finley. He is, I don't know. I got him on Craigslist. So I was told he was a purebred Shih Tzu. He's not. As you can see, he's cuter.
He'll turn into a pit bull in no time.
Oh, yeah. He's a killer. He'll get you.
All right, I made a big old list of topics because although we've had these episodes in the past, And we've talked a lot about rates and arguments and disputes, especially when the industry is so volatile between carriers and brokers. Grace, you actually brought up during our strategy session, ooh, look, we have our freight nerd.
Grace number 2. Number 1, number 2.
Yes.
Welcome, Grace. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you.
You were texting me and I was like, it's Mad Gaines. You just pop in whenever you're like.
We're casual here.
Yeah.
No rules. It's 2:00 on a Friday and we're drinking wine.
Last
Don't tell my president.
He's
my owners.
Last week my internet cut out and so if it happens with you guys, just keep rolling because sometimes I freeze and
the show must go on.
Yeah, the show must go on. Okay, Grace, will you introduce yourself? Because I've known you for a while now.
Yes. It's funny how I used to be a big fan of your YouTube page like forever ago. And then it's just so cool to see how much you've expanded it and so proud of you. I could just
thank you.
Yes. We should have saw it coming, really, right?
Yeah.
My name is Grace. I am a freight nerd. I love everything freight. I'm huge into the tech side of things. And I love seeing how this industry evolves, how we work together better, which is why I love this topic. And just in general, love the industry. And it's the one industry that affects everyone. So why not talk about it all the time?
And it's funny because I remember one of our we were doing something, but I brought up Flatbed and your eyes sparkled talking about Flatbed. So we'll have to have a Flatbed episode soon with Amanda Miller and anyone else who wants to join. So we should start. Okay, Grace, you're going to kick it off with that. Grace number 1, Grace OTR Grace is going to kick it off with those. I forget that we have a lot of people listening and not watching. I got to remember that.
Should we do Clubhouse? I just
what is
Clubhouse.
I'm all over Clubhouse. I'm loving Clubhouse.
Are you in the transportation group?
Yes, and I'm in the female truck drivers and all of them, and listening to Pollard in Arkansas, and he was broken down yesterday telling his story. It's great.
How do we just put it on, or I'm very not smart with that.
What is Clubhouse?
Oh, come on!
It's like a chat room.
Clubhouse.
How do I not know?
I know Dooner's on it. Dooner, are you on this? I saw him on there.
It was supposed to be professionals, you have to be invited to it, and now it's just kind of remember when Facebook was like that? You had to be in college, and now run by your parents.
I think it's still a little exclusive, but last night I found some really good transportation talks, I guess. They're talking about the one last night was just I think it was it was transportation after prison. Shoot, I just started one.
I have got to get on this Clubhouse business.
Yeah, actually you do.
Yeah,
you really do. You would love it.
So I don't know how. I'm totally going to get on this Clubhouse business and nerd it out. I already know that's going to happen immediately after the show. Okay, Grace, you're up first with Grace from OTR, with what we talked about yesterday, which was a really good one. And now I've already drank 3 glasses of wine and I can't remember.
Well, so we were kicking it off with layovers because we were talking a little bit about where did $150 come from as it applies to layovers.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. And I feel obviously I have a unique perspective being on the factoring side. So we have amazing relationships with tons of brokers, but obviously our client is the carrier. And for me, I care immensely. I see Del Mar and I see Renee and some others that are jumping in here. Hi, love you. But, we represent the carrier and owner operators, everyone all over. And so, for years, I think the biggest thing that we always see that carriers have issues with the brokers is regarding accessorials, be it detention, layover, lumper. But the layover is the biggest one. And it's the problem that you have is that that the word from the truckers is brokers keep a percentage of their layover and detentions that that they're getting from a customer. Not all of them, but it's debated. I mean, is that a revenue stream for brokers outside of just what they're getting paid for the loads to move anyway? That if there is an issue, if there is a delivery time that's supposed to be at 1 and an appointment, you don't unload until the following morning. Is that really worth $150? So that was something we kind of debated yesterday. And a big question is that, why do we think that the carrier actually receives the layover and detention pay that they should?
So for those of us who are shippers and they're kind of confused about what she's talking about, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, which is the broker who arranged for the transportation is telling the shipper, we have these accessorials, we have layovers, detention, whatever else. And then they're paid by the shipper for that amount, but they don't pass on the entire amount to the carrier. Is that what's going on?
Correct. So typically when a carrier gets to a receiver, they'll sit for up to 2 hours. Up to 2 hours, nothing gets paid. After that, you move into detention. And brokers typically pay a carrier for sitting there after 2 hours plus. It really ranges. And I even looked into that today, and it's not common. It's not like, it's not like a layover where it's a traditional amount. But after about, I think it's 6 hours, then they move into layover pay, because obviously if it's $40 an hour of detention, that adds up. So after a certain period of time, they just move into a flat layover rate, and it's typically around $150. And for people listening out there, a carrier's cost a day is probably around $300, if not more. They can make $1,000 on a load typically in a trip per day, possibly, and that's arguable depending on the equipment and the lane. But I'm just saying for an example. So if you cost a carrier a day of waiting to only pay them $150,
that's nuts.
They're losing money. That's a lot of lost money. That's a lot of lost revenue. And it's common. So, in talking about layovers and detention pays and carrier broker risks, that's probably one of the biggest. Because they're getting money. The broker can get money from the customer for the shipper, for the carrier sitting there. But does the carrier always receive all of it is the question.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead just because I have a lot of experience, but no, that's definitely one of the revenue streams of a broker, and it's pretty standard as far as I know anyway. I will say a lot of I think it all goes back to relationship, right? You have a relationship with a carrier, and you guys will have an understanding, as well as attention, as well as whatever other accessorials happen during the life of the load. But a lot of customers are not, they're paying a lower rate, I guess, than what probably is what it costs for a truck to run per day. So like if a carrier misses out on a whole entire load, well, that's going to be more than $150 that you're paying to the carrier, but it's transportation. Like, this is part of the business. Somebody in the comments mentioned, well, okay, if we're doing this for the carrier, shouldn't the shippers be able to get money back as well if they are, if they don't have a load deliver on time? It's all, once we get to the culture of pointing fingers, oh, it's a shipper's fault, it's the carrier's fault, it's the broker's fault, nobody's going to be successful, because we all have to work together for greater good. And so like getting really like nitpicky about I'm not going to pay this carrier, let's just keep leaving this carrier on hold because we don't want to pay him. Well, that's silly, because we have to look at the macro long-term benefits of, okay, what is the long-term effect of paying this carrier what they're owed what am I trying to say? Based on, let's just take this $150 margin right now for this one and done. This carrier will probably never use us again because we treated him like a one and done carrier. And that's, some brokerages operate like that, and they have to, because they're a spot carrier and they're not able to really cater to those carrier relationships. but most of us in the brokerage world, we have freight that we can build a carrier base around and create relationships. Point blank, period. And I just like throughout the years, I've just feel like there's so many excuses as to, oh, you know, all the carriers suck, and then everybody on the coverage side, all of your customers suck, and everybody on, and you know, it's just like a circle that keeps revolving. And until we really get to the core of, okay, these are the issues, how do we all come together and fix this as one? Sorry, that's a long tangent.
Grace number 2. I have my freight nerd Grace. Okay, so I'm a little confused, and I can see some people in the comments are with me, I think, on this. So let's back up a little bit on a couple points that Abby made. First, okay, I'm a lawyer. So why doesn't everybody just put this shit on the rate con? Like, hey, this is how much we're going to pay you in accessorials. Why don't they like list it out? Why don't truckers ask brokers? Maybe anybody can answer this, but in my mind, I'm like, well, let's have that conversation ahead of time.
First thing I'll say is I love that lawyer response, Cassandra. Why not just make it on the paperwork? Yeah. Put it on the paper. And then read it. Yeah. You know, I was sleeping on this last night, and I think it's important to not look at it so negatively instead of whose fault is it, and even saying it's everyone's fault. It's that everyone's right. That in that situation, every person in that conversation has a good point. And I think it's important that conversations are made in every party involved, carrier, broker, shipper, delivery. Delivery is a huge one. A lot of people don't actually call a delivery location, which is a lot of times where this problem happens. And the conversation just needs to be made, and then it needs to be put, Miss Lawyer, into the paperwork. So,
I mean, at least in the Raycon, but I sometimes see this language in Raycons, and I sometimes don't. It's like not there, and then it becomes a he said, she said situation, really.
Well, yeah, like goes back to the original contract and all that jazz. And I think that a lot of really great brokers, they actually sometimes eat that fee to keep the carrier. I think Grace said it yesterday. We were talking that she's noticed that shift into the importance of carriers, and brokers are actually building really great relationships with carriers nowadays. They understand their true value, because the shippers at the end of the day really are cost is their number one concern. So I think it's about that conversation. Abby touched on it. It's about the relationship. And it's not being afraid of just having a hard conversation. Transportation is hard, but you know what's harder? Spending your whole Thursday night talking with a carrier or talking to a shipper about who's going to pay $100. Like I think all of our evenings are more valuable than $100. So I think it's a lot to do with just everyone. And I'm trying to work on this even myself. I'm not saying, well, we're all wrong. No, we're all right. Like all of us have a valid point in this. And like any other business, any other sector of business, we got to have the conversation and then we have to work it out. So I think that you're 100% right. I think it's always good after the conversation to put it on paper, but there needs to be a talk of why that can happen, especially we talked about with this weather and everything now. Like if I'm sending anything to Texas or picking up anything in Texas, my number one phone call is going to make sure that place is even open. A lot of shippers don't even like do that stuff. Yeah. And a lot of people do really good jobs at either sales or as a carrier representative, because they're willing to make that quick 2-minute phone call to make sure that this situation doesn't even happen to begin with.
Go ahead, Abby.
I was going to say most of the time too, if it's contractual freight, if you're used to this lane, you're going to know most of the time there is a layover. So when you're booking, when the carrier sales, when whoever's booking the load, be transparent, be honest, be like, hey, okay, so here's this load. Here's the deal. Most of the time I do have a layover. So I want to let you know that we will pay you a layover as long as we have this, this, and this. Just want to let you know on the front end, we really want you to take this load, but we understand if you can't. Okay, you guys, it's so simple. Having that communication and having that context on the front end goes so far, because a lot of these carriers, I mean, I would assume anyway, a lot of these carriers are just having people lie left and right to them. So now they don't, who can they believe if this is a good load or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why having core partner relationships is really how you're going to succeed in this industry and whatever business you're doing with your customer.
I think you'd be surprised. Oh, sorry. I think you'd be surprised at how great of a relationship you can make when you're just like, you know what? I fucked up. Like,
yeah,
I made a mistake.
Vulnerable.
Yeah. Carriers will split fees for that. But
I wonder sometimes, like, why is it that we will take $250 off a load for a carrier being late, but we only pay them $150 to sit there for hours upon hours? Like that's sort of the train. Like, what is that about? So, and you see that on rate cons, and even if we put it on a rate con, Ashley Pope is chiming in and Outlaw's mentioning it too. You hound for detention, you hound for layover, you get it on the rate con. A lot of carriers are smart now. They say, hey, I'm not unloading until I get the rate con. But still, then you'll have the broker come back and say, well, until I get paid by my customer, I'm not actually paying it. And that happens far too often. I hear Ron in the comments and he says, well, why would the broker get any of it? And unfortunately, I don't necessarily think it's driven by greed so much as brokers are paid by how much margin they can bring in or the revenue, or you know what I mean? And so if that is a piece of it, there might be some incentive to fluff there. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but we know that it happens. And it's just, that's the struggle too, is that I don't know that a broker should receive any of the detention or labor pay.
Yeah, that is a bit weird that they do receive that. But at the same time, the broker is the one in the middle facilitating everything and doing all the work. So yeah. I kind of get that too.
True.
Yeah.
I can't think of any real reason why a broker would skim off the accessorials, except for it's just industry standard.
Right. It's always been that way, and that's just how.
Or the broker was able to negotiate a higher accessorial amount from the shipper because they get a lot of business from the shipper. They're good at that, and then they get a little bit of.
Which I feel like that's almost never happens. I mean,
I'm trying to think
wrong, but right, yeah.
I think sometimes I've talked to carriers too who, in those situations, and it's dependent on how the rate confirmation and everything would be set up, they don't even get it. They don't get the $150. If it's not written as an accessorial, sometimes they know they're not going to actually get that $150. So I think this even comes down to the driver talking to the brokers, is saying I'm actually upset, not so much with you, but maybe the system that I'm working under, because I know I'm not going to see that $150 on my end paycheck. Really good carriers, a lot of times, if that situation happens, they'll say, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to make sure that's actually listed as an accessorial, because there's a chance that I'm not going to see that from my company. So it's something deeper rooted that maybe that carrier representative isn't realizing at the end of the day. A lot of really good carriers, a lot of really good drivers. I've helped with free DOT inspections before. They love that stuff because they get an extra $100 when they pass an inspection. So some of them will be yes, inspect me, or some of them are yeah, I have things to do, get out of here. But there's a lot of different ways that they're paid that I think leads to what the carrier experiences, which is some guy pissed off that he even has to lay over to begin with, and it has nothing to do with the system or with the broker and how they're set up. It's something deeper rooted in the company that they're working with.
Right.
Okay, so we have to go back. There's been a lot of chatter.
Mhm.
I want to make sure you guys.
How do I see the comments?
What'd you say?
How do I see the comments?
Someone
I see,
asked
like,
why
the-
the carrier.
I'm
Someone
interested
asked why
in
the carrier
commenting, but
Someone
Ryan,
asked why the
no
carrier
one-
doesn't just go to the broker or go to the shipper and ask for the detention or labor, and you can't do that. You can't back solicit a broker's
Ooh, no.
customer. So
They have to
don't.
get put on a
don't do
do
that.
not book
Yeah.
list.
Well,
for
Right.
good freight
and
card.
sometimes the broker can negotiate more. Like, I think brokers like get more upset because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you told them you do it for $50. Like, we could have really actually helped you out on that one. So it's like, I wouldn't do that just because, and especially if the relationship I built with the broker as a carrier is so strong, I would think that they would bat for me harder than I know that I could pull that talk off.
I don't mean to be a commercial, but Grace, you're constantly you work for OTR, which is a factoring company, which was interesting when we did our strategy session to get a feel for what it was like in your world. Because you're right in between the broker and the trucker.
Right.
So what does that conversation look like when the trucker comes to you and they're like, hey, they owe me $150 for layover. And the broker's like, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm not paying.
Yeah, I mean, we feel caught in the middle all the time because our client, as I mentioned, is the carrier. We love them. We want to take care of them. We want to empower them. We want to make them, more successful. And yet we have great broker relationships too. We're talking to brokers all day long, and, we want to help everybody. And, we're the middleman. We're a participant in the market. And, we really don't have, we cheer for higher rates, of course. I mean, we get a piece of, we'd rather factor $1,200 than $1,000. So why wouldn't we want the carrier to be paid what they're due? But the hard part comes in is when you actually do see what a carrier is due. He really should get detention on this. And sure, we deal with issues all the time with brokers where a carrier didn't do what they said they were going to do, or they are holding freight hostage, and we help out there too. We'll do what we can in those situations. But sometimes we get put in the middle between the carrier saying, hey, this is $1,000 load and I deserve $500 in detention or layover, whatever they think it is, pay it. I'm factoring this. This is what I'm owed. And we have to go to the broker and say, can you verify that that's true? And they're like, no, we're not paying that. And then the carrier would be upset with us because they say, why is the broker not paying this? And this isn't right. And it may appear like we're taking the side of the broker, which is not the case at all. It's just we can't, we will work to help a carrier try and get what they're owed. I think it's important to do that, but at the same time, we've got only so much leverage ourselves, and not every situation's the same. But we will do what we can.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly valuable. I didn't even think about that part of your business and the value it provides, just because I'm a little naive sometimes. But okay, there's a person. I haven't seen this person in a while, and I don't know who it is because the person, him or her, named themselves Buttered Bread here. I don't know why it's buttered bread. In fact, but I saw, in fact, when I said something earlier in the show about flatbed, this person said, did someone say flatbread?
They just really like bread. Everybody's welcome. Bread lovers, welcome. Cheese. I actually got some cheese.
I hope it's like Ron's alter ego or something. Okay, so Buttered Bread started getting fired up, and I saw it midway through. He said, I
see. 228. How do you think the shipper feels?
Yeah, there it is. How do you think the shipper feels? Their revenue stream starts with them. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do you get money back when the service provider doesn't do what they would do, OTD, TARP, etc. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting, and I saw Ron Kane, our famous Metropolis shipper, who never holds back punches. He's known as the freight godfather. He had said in the comments earlier that most shippers won't actually have cash on hand for detention or layover or a way to track it. So I think there was a debate going on whether the carrier should just get paid directly from the shipper.
Interesting.
And then the last thing I want to show the freight nerd Grace is your little BFF. My freight BFF as well. Ryan Schreiber said, finally some guests who return my phone calls, Grace.
Pick up the phone.
But I can see that there are a lot of back and forth in the comments, and some of them I am kind of missing. I think they're making some really great points about, how is a truck sitting for 6 hours at a dock and how little they're getting paid for it. I think this topic is so interesting because I still get the feeling that it's the unspoken thing and the topic that many brokers and carriers are avoiding, because if it was really industry standard, like, okay, Grace, you said that a 2 hour, OTR Grace said that a 2 hour detention was like industry standard, right? And
well, you'll sit for 2 hours before detention even is considered being paid. And
then detention kicks in. Is detention and layover the same thing?
No, detention is your hourly rate that you'll get paid for just sitting there. Okay. A layover is the flat rate that you'll get paid for sitting 6+ hours.
Whoa. Yeah. Like a lot of times a layover is like, whoops, the product's not ready. Come back tomorrow. So they're like laid over a day. Kind of like
you get $150 for that?
Oh, you didn't I didn't realize you didn't understand. Yeah.
Not completely. I thought y'all were making it interchangeable. I was like, oh, I didn't know. They only get $150?
Well, to the carrier, the customer pays more, but then that's why we're saying the broker takes a cut of that. Always.
Abby and I are like, well, there's reasons. Like,
yeah, because when I do contracts and rate when I review clients' rate confirmations, I'll see tons of shit about, especially in the rate confirmation, detention. But I don't see too much about. I don't think I've ever seen anything about layover. And just so you guys know, when I negotiate those standard contracts between the shippers and the brokers, or the shippers and the truckers, often the accessorials are just left off, and I have to ask about it. And I'm like, why don't we just have something very standard in the industry? Everyone does this. Everyone knows it. Boom.
It is fairly standard, I would say. Like, for the most part, I would give a number for average detention, average layover from the customer, and what we pay the carrier. But every customer is different. Like, I asked a couple of my old customers today, and some give, upwards of $360 to the carrier, broker, whoever there is, directly they're taking their freight. But for me, I'm used to $250, $300. So I think it all determines. I do know, like, the detention rate went up over the past 2 years, but I don't believe the labor rate really went up much recently.
Everybody pays a different detention rate. Like, there's no standard detention. I see, Dan, you were mentioning, why have some carriers are moving to 1 hour of free time, and this is something that's been debated as well. Why don't carriers just go? And some carriers will go to the broker and say, this is my carrier agreement. I get paid this amount for detention. I get paid this amount for layover. These are my terms. And I say, fantastic, smart, beautiful, do it. However, they will put that in the system. And before they book you on the load, they're going to consider this going forward.
Yes.
You might actually not get loaded based on your carrier agreement.
That is incredibly accurate.
Right. So it's kind of, I don't know, do you do that?
The thing is,
you want to get loaded.
The thing is, maybe I'm like brainwashed, but I feel like every broker, for the most part, will pay the carrier if they have all their documentation and everything situated. So like, carriers are not dumb. They know exactly what you need to be able to get detention. So like, let's do that. Let's put everything together so that when you present it to the broker, there's no negotiables. It's very clear cut. Oh, I was here 45 minutes early. They didn't start loading me until this time. I was at this time. Like, let's just let's be very simple about it and make it so that a broker can't say no to you. There's literally no way. You have all the proof, like let's stop with all the jumble mumble in between and be like, here are the facts. Do I get it? This is our contract. You owe me this much. Bye. Thank you. Nice day. Can't wait till the next load.
For those of you in the comments that are like, brokers need to be regulated, brokers are doing this and that and this, what I always wonder about carriers, just to push back on y'all a little bit and piss y'all off, is, y'all can kind of create your own industry standard. You have OIDA. All y'all join OIDA and talk about what you're going to charge for accessorials, even though you're kind of not supposed to. But everybody can do, if you kind of unionize a little bit more, which I'm using the wrong words for that. They're like no words in a way. But if the carriers are right up front, this is what I'm getting paid for this, and this, instead of avoiding the conversation, maybe that would also help drive this problem. I'm assuming that there's some blame laid there. But what we'll do is we'll switch to the next topic, which I don't have. Freight Nerd Grace, do you remember any of the other topics, or OTR Grace or Abby?
I do.
I do.
Oh my God.
Oh, you took notes? I love that.
You always go to a meeting with a notepad and pen. Thank you, Bob King, if you're watching.
I love it. I think we talked about the aspect of the end of the low life cycle. Yeah, the end of the world.
Tell me more about that.
Regulation is the end of the world. No, on the OTR side, the extra work that is put on the endpoint when bills need to be paid. We touched on that for a little bit as well. The operation side. Yeah.
The operation side, because I think that's super interesting, right? So, and I hope this is where you're going, or I'm just going to start running.
Run.
But I think it's really interesting that, when it comes to rates, accessorials, cargo claims, finance, all that stuff, that back office work is often the most forgotten about in a way. And I think OTR Grace had asked one time, why don't brokers lean on factoring companies when they have more problems like hostage loads and cargo claims?
Yeah, I did mention that. Like I said, years ago, the brokers would let us get more involved with claims. And then in recent years, and I'm sure it has to do with liability, they're like, we only talk to the carrier directly. But I think to myself, like, it is in our interest as well to get this resolved. We don't want you holding the aging. We want to work with the carrier, or especially, we do get a lot of calls about hostage loads, I think because they know we have a great relationship with the carrier, and we will try and get those issues resolved. But certainly,
so you like call a carrier and say, hey, what's up? Why are you holding the load?
Yeah. And, because we pay them, they answer our calls because we have. So
that's interesting.
Right.
I didn't really think about that yesterday. I know we talked about how you said a lot of times the carriers will call you in order to help talk to the broker, but that is actually a really interesting point. Like using you, because let's be honest, like the carrier, a lot of times the brokers are not using the same broker every single day, but a lot of brokers use OTR. So a broker calling OTR and saying, hey, this guy is giving me some issues, you actually do have a more leveraged voice in that situation. And I'm just like having an epiphany right now. That's actually that brokers should do that more often. And a lot of TMSs will say like who the payables and stuff is to. And I think that a lot of times brokers will go like straight to back office within the carrier to get someone higher up involved. But to call, because I know carriers, if OTR calls them and is like, hello, we have an issue, they're going to move very quickly.
Yeah.
It's actually a really great idea for like brokers to call you and say, hey, you have more leverage in this conversation. How can we figure out how to get this guy unloaded, et cetera? Interesting. I didn't really that didn't hit me yesterday, but that's actually a really good idea.
So an insider view, because I've ran a lot of teams, compliance teams, cargo claims teams, and AR teams. And I never, until I met you, Grace, I never thought about really leaning on factoring companies. And this is, okay, here's the thing, is that when you run an AP team, which Grace, Freight Nerd Grace knows, Grace Sharkey, you get hundreds of emails and calls and just inundated by factoring companies as a broker. Just inundated. They're just, it's like, I mean, at one point in time, I had an employee that had like her factoring day where she spent like 12 fucking hours calling factoring companies with emails and stuff like that. And I think they're viewed as more of processing, and there's so many of them because there's a low barrier to entry that it's creates a cacophony, and then people don't understand, hey, you can actually use them to your benefit. Until I met you, Grace, I didn't know I could use a factoring company to help me resolve a claim and also to help me hostage load, or a carrier who's simply not responding when they fall off the grid.
Right.
I never would have thought of that.
I never would have thought of it.
Carol makes a great point as well that we should mention. Likewise to the carrier, we can help them understand which brokers they maybe shouldn't be working with, because there could be some issues or concerns as well. Credit and that sort of thing. So, and I can't speak for all factoring companies, but I know we certainly do try to resolve those issues, and we want to be a partner to both the carrier and both the broker and resolve those types of issues. It doesn't bode well to have a carrier tied up and invoices and aging and all of that tied up. So if we can facilitate getting that taken care of, we absolutely will.
So let's flip, since I think we only have like 15 minutes left, and I want to flip to the conversation I think is the most interesting. Well, we just went over one of them that I thought was the most interesting, but my second most interesting, which is how, because today we're talking about how to build relationships between carriers and brokers, or the relationship rifts. And I want to talk about, and I think Freight Nerd Grace brought this up, which is how a freight broker is paid plays a big role in the debates and rifts between carriers and brokers. I think, or maybe Abby brought it up. I can't remember which one, but so Freight Nerd Grace, could you give us insight for those who are shippers and executives and they don't know how like carrier sales position is paid, the one who's dealing with carriers and building relationships with them?
I think Grace actually might have touched on it earlier, is that it's what a carriers need to understand is that a lot of times the brokerage or the carrier representative that they're working with is set up to want to book more loads, want to make more profit. They're paid off of the commissions, right? So when you add that level of commissions onto that job title, you're naturally creating a motivation of, today I need to make a certain amount of money. Schreiber, if you're listening still, you love this type of stuff. So I'm sure you're doing this.
They basically get a low salary, and then their commission is based off of the margin on each shipment, right? So like the difference between what the shipper pays and the carrier cost is what they focus on, right? Is that accurate?
That's the broker focuses on.
And when you set it up that way, I guess even ties into knowing how the carrier's getting paid, right? Like if you just throw the layover fee into the overall cost of the load, like the carrier might never see that. So I think it's important for each side to kind of take a step back or ask each side, like, how are you motivated? Now, I think it's safe to say overall, most carrier reps are set up for that reason. And you want to look at different ways of paying a carrier. Like, can you bonus them off of how much they're bringing their carrier costs down, right? Over time, compared to if you just total it all up at the end, kind of like a commission style. Like if there was some way that you could create like an analytical, that's not even the right word, but a formula that allows them to find the best carrier value wise, where it's like, maybe you're bonused off of no issues, or you're bonused off of just
like that.
loads being booked. Like I booked 10 loads and I only made $4 on every single load, but
you have no problems. So your soft costs are lower.
Exactly. So it all adds up, and I think that sometimes you don't look at when you set it up in that model of commissions, where other areas maybe are failing, right? So I think we're talking about like, is AR though spending so much time, or AP spending so much time dealing with the calls from Grace all day, right? Or even on the AR side, like how is the customer paying? They care less. They just want to know what's being paid, what the commission value is at the end. So when you set it up in that system of, okay, you're going to be commission based, a lot of times their motivation to find the best carrier relationship is squandered because
Just looking for the cheapest.
it's unfair to like ask of that person to be like, well, what about the overall business? Like, it's not my business, right? It's not my risk. So my risk is my paycheck every week and paying my mortgage or paying my bills. So I think it's important that you look at every job that is commission based and say, okay, am I creating a bad behavior by making it set up this way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what a lot of brokerages struggle with for sure, is how do I incentivize our carrier reps, brokers, whatever you call them, to not only make money, but also put quality carriers on your loads, because it's a very fine line to really develop those relationships at a really, really great price. Because a lot of times you want to give more, of course, you're going to want to give more money to your partner carriers. And I think a lot of people in this like day and age, especially new kids on the block, whatever, coming into transportation, which that's me, like my first job in transportation was my previous company. So that's, all I really know. But I think a lot of people coming in, they are so, they need that instant gratification. They need that satisfaction right off the bat. And that comes with, making a margin of 15% on a load, whatever it may be, instead of looking at the, it's like finite versus infinite mindset. You're looking at just one and done load, one load to the next load, to the next load, to the next load, one carrier, the next carrier, next carrier. You're literally just, your mindset's so just today, just this load.
Yeah, can you imagine you're like on a rat, what is the rat wheel thing called?
Yeah.
The hamster wheel?
Yeah, the hamster wheel.
Right.
That's literally, and that's why like all these spot brokers, I don't understand how they do it, because it's like, how do you even enjoy your job when you don't have people you're talking to every day? So for me, it's like
Abby, the burnout is high. I felt like it's kind of like the stock market, like stockbrokers.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about this. It relates so much to how stonks markets have evolved, right? Like you take away that extra fee that you're paying a broker, right? You create this open environment. Now you have Robin Hoods and other large industry people allowing you to sell and buy stocks at no margin, really. And now more people are doing it. I guarantee that there's more people trading stocks right now because they know they don't have to worry about that margin in buying and selling. And it's just like, think of, like, imagine if you were running like a grocery store and you're paying the cashier a commission, like, and the person got to the register and they're like,
You
this apple is $14. It's like, no, it's not. Like, what? Like, it would be such a headache. And then you're like paying more hourly wage to go back and forth on $2, and it becomes a headache. So you really got to figure out, okay, what value am I getting off of this employee? Even more long term, what do I need them to do for me, right? Like, bigger brokers, I think, have a better chance of making the switch because they already have the volume for to bring rates down. But if I'm going to get to that point, where is that? And it's not even on the broker side. I think a carrier side is the same way too. Like, how are you paying them? Is that making them more aggressive on the phone? Are they happier because they know at the end of the week I'm going to get a certain amount? A lot of it is an employee's mindset and how they do their job at the end of the day is based on the dollar value. And I think what's interesting is, a lot of times companies, shippers, even to every company, they look at it like, well, how come the employee isn't thinking about the general overall cause or the general company as a whole? You can't. It's not fair. It's not.
Yeah.
You're asking something that's not going to happen.
Do most brokers consider paying carrier sales reps extra for rebooking the same carrier to incentivize them to build relationships, and therefore it's not just about margin?
There are a lot of incentives at brokerages like that, but it's really hard to quantify. Like, okay, I mean, so I think for a carrier, it's like, what perk does this carrier have by booking with you? So like in the past, there's been, if you're a partner carrier, if you're whatever, you get different perks. You get first right of refusal, you get the load sent via email. There's different things you can get set up like that. But if you're looking at like overall freight on your board or freight per week, and you see that 80% of your freight is done with the top 20% of your carrier's freight or principal, right? Then we need to be really like establishing these relationships with those core carriers and figuring out how they can do more. Like, we should really, I think brokers, our role is really to almost serve as and we were talking about this before, but dispatcher. We're kind of like, a broker should kind of basically be a dispatcher for asset carriers. We should be able to offer like an asset style offering where it's our partner carrier, but we have such a great relationship with that partner carrier that it's almost could be like our own assets because you have that relationship. And sometimes you don't even have that relationship with your asset drivers that you might have with a partner carrier that you can rely on, you can trust on. They're going to pick up the loan on time, deliver on time, give you good service, and they're not going to lie to you. And that's really what it is all about. That's how, you're going to, well, I mentioned this already. That's just how you're going to succeed, is looking at the long-term mindset instead of just very transactional.
Yeah, I like that point quite a bit. Someone says, how do you develop a relationship with a carrier? This is Justin McAfee, sorry. How do you develop a relationship with a carrier on consistent spot loads? It's always P2P, person to person. People buy and sell to their relationships.
I think that one,
good point,
comes into market knowledge. That's how, what is the environment of that market at that specific time? And a lot of times I think brokers know maybe in that area I have a bigger advantage and vice versa. So it's the push and pull of that. And I think that's one other thing that can't be ignored. You have to take that into account that, okay, I understand during certain times of the week, this load is going to be harder to cover, and certain times of the year, weather-wise, et cetera, it's going to be a little bit easier. So that situation is, you can build a relationship, but the relationship is going to be based off of, okay, clearly that rate or this relationship is only going to last us during this time of the market. And that's why it's always great to find tools to kind of leverage what the market is actually at. So maybe it's a situation where you get that spot load frequently and you together figure out, okay, we're going to run at this rate all year round. And I understand on my end that during this time of the year, I'm going to take a loss. And you're going to understand on your end that during this time of the year, you're going to take a theoretical loss. So it's that one. I think spot market stuff comes down to knowing your markets, knowing what your true power is at that time. Like I hate to even bring it back to it again, but back to stocks, right? Like I'm not going to email some company and be like, hey, like the price is too low for me to sell because I want to sell it right now because I like need liquidity. Like it doesn't work that way. It's not valued at this point in time. So you can't ignore the fact that the market is there, and it's again a relationship. Talk about it, figure it out.
I'd like to chime in on that one because I've been told that excuse so many times, and I've been told we don't have the freight to be able to cure. I don't know why I'm getting worked up right now. I'm like, let me just say.
The dog will calm me down.
Yeah, he's giving me some like, ooh. Anyway, no, you know what? That's a common excuse. So, we only do spot freight. We can't build a carrier network. Baloney. You have one load a week, you can build a carrier network. You know what I mean? Like every carrier matters. So whatever it is. And also, you can look at pods instead of origin destination for one customer. Let's take all of our customers across the entire board and see what loads match up, which is where technology comes in. Of course, something carriers need brokers for, right? So I don't know where I was going.
No, I love it.
Looking at my dog, and I was like, a little bit. Anyway, yeah. Pod to pod. Stop giving the excuse that you can't build a carrier network on spot loads because it's not true. If you have a customer, you'll know their main spot lane. You'll know their lanes. You know what I mean? Like you'll know the areas they usually will have spot in because this is where their DCs are located. You know, spot is not just like unless it's a big grocery chain or whatever that's going to different locations at every single shipment, right? For the most part, there's going to be similarities no matter what, you know? So
to touch on that really quick, I think that this almost even turns into a broker shipper conversation. A lot of shippers are very smart and they have their DCs in areas they know that they'll be favored in and that they can get cheaper carriers. But with that means I need to know 4 days in advance that this shipment is going so I can find someone who values this load and isn't just low valued, right? Like I'm going to get an MC that's been around for 2 days and it's been swapped by 4 or 5 different carriers because you thought putting your warehouse here was going to allow you to get loads covered at the lowest rate possible. No, we're getting your loads covered because as a broker, we're being strategic on how we're planning on getting those covered. So customers that are taking advantage of where they're placed, it's important to say, you're not wrong. There are no loads in your area. But because carriers now know that from all the tools that are available, they're also not here. So unless you want to pay and have them drive over here, I need to track someone into that location 2 or 3 days in advance.
Makes sense. So we are right on 4 o'clock. That went by so fast.
So fast.
Oh my
I
God.
feel like we didn't touch on like half.
I
of
know.
No, we didn't.
I just want to say, I feel like carrier relationships are really getting better. I do think over the years, and I've personally seen it, that the broker really does value the relationship and the carrier, and there is some change going on where let's take care of the carrier, let's take better care of the carrier on a spot load or whatnot, because we're going to need them again.
Yeah.
So we really can't afford to burn this bridge on this one load. And I think there's definitely been a shift in, there's so much competition out there that you need to take care of the carrier.
Mm-hmm. And I think 2020 has taught us that more than any other time, that, you know, the carriers we don't have relationships with, guess what? They're not going to haul your freight because they're going to be taking the freight that pays. Point blank period. So you have the only thing that matters are those relationships, because otherwise you're just gonna be either paying a crap ton from other carriers, or you're gonna get carriers that have crappy service. So
yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And a good way to end this too. We should definitely do a part 2. I saw Timothy Tang said that in the comments, and I was like, yeah, we should. Thank you to OTR Capital and to JJ Keller for making this event possible. You guys were amazing guests, by the way. I absolutely loved having you guys. I really hope you come back on and we can talk about more of this good freight stuff. For everybody else, I hope next week goes way better to everybody who's in Texas and our boiling water. So sorry.
Yeah.
Oh man. But
laughing.
Cheers from Canada. So okay, so weekend, and I'm going to end the broadcast.